The Bible says in the book of Genesis, chapter number 22, verses 9 through 12. And they came to the place which God had told him of, and Abraham built an altar there, and laid the wood in order, and bound Isaac his son, and laid him on the altar upon the wood. And Abraham stretched forth his hand, and took the knife to slay his son. And the angel of the Lord called unto him out of heaven, and said, Abraham, Abraham. And he said, Here am I. And he said, Lay not thine hand upon the lad, neither do thou anything unto him, for now I know that thou fearest God, seeing thou hast not withheld thy son, thine only son, from me. Now I trust that you're familiar with the story here in Genesis chapter 22. You know that the Lord blessed Abraham in his old age, supernaturally blessed him with a son, Isaac. And yet, here in chapter 22, we find that the Lord has now instructed Abraham to offer up his only son that God supernaturally blessed him with. God is now telling Abraham, I want you to go and now offer your son Isaac as a sacrifice unto me. I mean, what a wild, what a wild, crazy instruction from the Lord. And without going into all the details, you know the story. Abraham was obedient. And as a matter of fact, if you read in Hebrews chapter 11, you find that what Abraham, the reason why he was so obedient, he had so much faith in God and in the promises that God had given him that were to be accomplished through the descendants that his descendants through his son Isaac. Abraham believed God would be faithful to his promises. So Abraham rationalized this thing out that obviously the Lord is going to raise my son from the dead. So I'm going to obey the instruction of the Lord, and the Lord will raise my son up from the dead. That's how much faith Abraham had in God, which is very impressive. And so we see here both the faith and the obedience of Abraham. But for this devotion, I want you to think about his son Isaac. That's really the point that I want to make for this particular devotional, is in regards to Isaac. It's very interesting. As a matter of fact, I don't know if it's not even more impressive than the faith and obedience of Abraham in this story is the obedience of Isaac. Because when you read the story, as Abraham has Isaac, binds him upon the altar, you don't read anywhere in that story of Isaac resisting. You don't read anywhere of Isaac complaining. Now listen, Isaac was no dummy. Obviously, as he laid on that altar, which was made for the purpose of offering a sacrifice, I think it's pretty obvious Isaac knew what was going on. And yet, in no moment do you read of Isaac struggling or resisting or arguing with his dad about what was going on. He just simply followed in his father's footsteps and obeyed, and he laid himself upon that altar. And of course, you know the story, as Abraham raised the knife and was ready to slay his son and offer his son up as a sacrifice. The angel stops Abraham and then commends him for his obedience. And then the Lord provides them a ram to replace Isaac upon the altar. And so instead of sacrificing Isaac, they sacrificed the ram unto the Lord. Great story of faith and obedience on the part of Father Abraham. But I am also very impressed with the behavior of Isaac. He never resisted. He never rebelled. He never struggled. He never argued or complained about what was going on. To me, that's very impressive. And I think the lesson that we learn from that is this. It seems to me that Abraham's great faith and obedience had a great influence upon his son Isaac. And that's the point of this devotion. Listen, we can have a great impact and influence upon our children through our faith and through our obedience to the Lord. Now, I would like to encourage you. I'm always looking for a way to encourage you through these devotionals. Some of you that are watching this video are dealing with some wayward children. Perhaps you have a son or a daughter or some grandchildren that are not serving the Lord. They're out of the way. They're out of the will of God. May I encourage you? Uh, Let's never give up on our children. Always remember the story of the prodigal son. Now, we're not dealing with the story of the prodigal son, but we are dealing with the story of how Abraham influenced his son Isaac through his faith and through his obedience. And so I want to encourage you today, don't give up on your children. Let me tell you what the best thing you can do for your children is. If you have some children that are wayward, and that are not in the will of God, the best thing you could do for your children is to be the very best example of faith and obedience unto the Lord. In other words, listen, you be the example of what you desire to see in your children. You want to see your children praying? Then you lead by example. You pray. You want to see your children in church? Then you lead by example. You go to church. You be faithful to church. You want your children to be obedient to the will of God? Then you be obedient to the will of God for your life. Live your life, dear parent, dear mother, dear father. Live your life the way that you would love for your children to live their lives for the honor and the glory of God. Now, I understand. Children are going to grow up. They're going to become adults. They're going to go their own way one day, and they're going to make up their own decisions. But through our faith and obedience, as we see through the example of Father Abraham, through our faith and obedience, through our good example, we increase the chances of our children doing right. And when our children don't do right and they go wayward, if you'll just remain faithful, don't give up, remain faithful, remain obedient to the Lord, and the Lord just may use your good example to touch their hearts and to have a great influence in your wayward child's life. And that may be the very thing the Lord uses to get them back in the way. Don't give up on your children. Be like Father Abraham. You be faithful, you be obedient. And I believe the Lord will use that as he did to influence Isaac. The Lord just may use our good examples to influence our children as well. God bless you.